You ever see someone try so hard to sound smart, they end up inventing a new form of dumb? Yeah, tonight's one of those nights. I'm Ethan Blake, and we're about to witness a masterclass in verbal self-destruction. From dodged questions to laughable logic, our featured guest serves up enough nonsense to fill an encyclopedia of embarrassment. Lucky for you, I brought my sarcasm net and a bucket of salt. Let's catch it all and season it just right. Because in the great buffet of public idiocy, I'm your sarcastic chef.
At their convention, they had union leaders and CEOs. They had Democratic Party icons and lifelong Republicans.
Jon Stewart just torched the DNC, and it was absolutely hilarious. On The Daily Show, he didn't just highlight the party's blatant double standards, he dragged Kamala Harris down with them, delivering a takedown that was sharp, unfiltered, and impossible for even the loyalists to ignore.
The Democrats had people who prosecuted sexual predators and...
And when someone like Stewart turns on his own party this hard, you know the cracks are starting to show. Trust me, we've got all the juicy details lined up. So if you haven't already, smash that subscribe button, because you won't want to miss bold, unfiltered clips like this. It's only getting better.
They had a guy yelling, "Screw the billionaires," followed immediately by a very happy billionaire.
Yep. Talk about contradictions. The Democratic Party is full of them. That's why I often call them performative. They bend over backward to pander to every group imaginable, and in doing so, lose any clear sense of identity. For a party that claims to fight for progressive values, many of their actions are actually shockingly regressive. And Jon Stewart, he calls it out with precision in one of his most hilarious and brutally honest takedowns yet. This is exactly why he deserves serious credit. At a time when most of the media and late-night hosts like Jimmy Kimmel are too afraid to touch these topics, Stewart shows real guts. It takes courage to challenge your own side, especially when groupthink dominates the narrative. But Stewart isn't afraid to ask the uncomfortable questions. He cuts through the noise and hypocrisy, and that's what makes his voice not just relevant, but refreshing in today's political climate.
We need an economy that works for all of us, not just the billionaire class. My fellow Americans, when 60% of our people live paycheck to paycheck, the top 1% have never, ever had it so good.
Now this is rich, coming from none other than Bernie Sanders, a man reportedly worth millions, who enjoys all the perks of the elite while constantly railing against them. At conventions like this, it's the usual recipe: fiery rhetoric, emotional appeals, and absolutely no real substance. The Democrats love to rant about how billionaires are destroying democracy, yet they conveniently ignore their own ties to extreme wealth. Take Michael Bloomberg, for instance, a literal billionaire who pours mountains of cash into the party whenever it suits them. Funny how his name never surfaces in their anti-billionaire tirades. It's selective outrage at its most blatant. They condemn wealth when it benefits their narrative, but welcome it with open arms when it upholds their own political machine. If that's not hypocrisy, what is? Bernie likes to play the role of the outsider, but let's be real. He's been part of the insider club for years. And conventions like this, they're nothing more than political theater for public consumption, which makes Jon Stewart's upcoming point even more interesting, because he's about to strip away the illusion and expose the game for what it really is.
The Democrats had people who prosecuted sexual predators and...
This is absolutely hilarious. You've got President Bill Clinton sharing the stage with Kamala Harris, a former prosecutor known for locking up sex offenders, while his own legacy remains permanently stained by allegations of sexual misconduct. The irony practically writes itself. One is a former president with a scandal-ridden past, and the other is eyeing the presidency while positioning herself as a champion of justice. The contradiction couldn't be more obvious. But Jon Stewart didn't stop there. He took it further by exposing yet another glaring double standard within the DNC. Party members have loudly proclaimed their support for the so-called liberation of Palestine, waving slogans and hashtag activism all over social media. Yet at the very same convention, not a single Palestinian voice was invited to speak or given any meaningful representation. So much for diversity and inclusion, right? It's the kind of hypocrisy Stewart refuses to ignore. The DNC loves to posture and perform, but when it comes to actually walking the walk, they fall embarrassingly short. And as we're about to see, the next clip reveals just how much this disconnect frustrates even someone as sharp and fearless as Stewart.
Let us choose joy.
Yes.
Moments after the DNC proudly declared itself the Party of Joy, American Palestinians began speaking out, frustrated by feeling sidelined and ignored. It was a stark contradiction for a party that claims to stand with Palestinians. Their complete absence from the main stage was glaring. No speakers, no representation, no acknowledgement, just silence. Leading the criticism was Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, who didn't hold back. She told reporters, "It's hard not to feel invisible as a Palestinian American. Our trauma and pain feel unseen and ignored by both parties. One party uses our identity as a slur, and the other refuses to hear from us. Where is the shared humanity? Ignoring us won't stop the genocide." The optics were impossible to ignore. The DNC can shout about inclusivity all day, but when a group they claim to support is entirely excluded from their national platform, the message falls flat. It feels hollow, performative at best, and outright hypocritical at worst. And if that wasn't enough, Kamala Harris stepped in, bizarrely blaming Donald Trump for the Russia-Ukraine war, despite she and Biden having already been in office for 2 years when the conflict escalated. The irony writes itself.
He encouraged Putin to invade our allies, said Russia could, quote, do whatever the hell they want. 5 days before Russia attacked Ukraine, I met with President Zelensky to warn him about Russia's plan to invade. I helped mobilize a global response over 50 countries to defend against Putin's aggression. I will stand strong with Ukraine and our NATO allies.
Kamala Harris isn't just the queen of word salads. She's the undisputed monarch of empty promises. Around the same time she was delivering lofty speeches about diplomacy and global stability, she was already serving as vice president. And what happened on her watch? Needless lives were lost. Chaos erupted, and American foreign policy appeared more disoriented than ever. Her recent attempt to pin the blame for the war in Ukraine on Donald Trump wasn't just dishonest, it was utterly illogical. Trump held no authority over U.S. foreign policy at the time. He wasn't in office, didn't run the State Department, and had no power to act. All he could do was speak his mind, for better or worse. The real decision-making power rested with Biden and Harris. Yet instead of owning the consequences, they continue to deflect, distract, and avoid accountability at every opportunity. Blaming others is easy, taking responsibility is another story entirely. And Harris's record says it all. Sadly, the same pattern of hypocrisy and double standards has infected the media. Left-leaning outlets, so quick to accuse others of bias, ignore their own, just as former White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki is doing here, playing defense for a narrative that's falling apart.
You're at MSNBC. Do they come to you every day and go, here's what we think is important to preserve and fight for whatever?
No, everybody gets a zillion press releases and pitch calls, but no.
No. I'm talking about the head of it.
Oh, no. You determine, we determine, each of us for our shows, here's what I'm going to cover today, and here's what I'm going to talk about, and here's what I think is important, which there's an independence-ish of that. And there also is, you're not waiting to be told what to say about anything. You're going to say what you think. So people can trust that, and that is a good thing.
See, I disagree with that. I think it's not that you're able to be independent. It's that you're then a prisoner purely to the minute by minutes. Purely
You mean
to
in terms of ratings?
the ratings, incentives, and all those other things. If you don't have the ideological component, right, then you don't have a governing authority of editorial authority, right? The greatest trick Roger Ailes ever played was he delegitimized editorial authority while exercising absolute steel trapdoor editorial authority.
The greatest thing he did, because it led them to be an arm piece, a mouthpiece of the right wing.
It led them to be exactly what he wanted it to be, which is an effective expression of his worldview.
And MSNBC, I am unburdened by not having, I can share whatever I think. I have obviously worked in Democratic politics for 20 years. I don't hide anything about that. It is a progressive leaning network. But nobody is, to the frustration at times of many elected Democrats, it is not a mouthpiece of the Democratic Party.
If you've been following our videos over the past few weeks, you already know Jen Psaki is flat out lying. We've broken it down point by point, showing how MSNBC operates as little more than a PR arm for the Democratic Party. And it's not just us saying this. Even Bill Maher, no conservative by any means, has openly criticized MSNBC for its blatant hypocrisy and shameless bias. So, am I shocked by Psaki's latest spin? Not at all. She lives in a carefully curated echo chamber where everyone nods in agreement and dissenting opinions are treated like hostile intrusions. It's painfully clear she's out of touch with what's really going on outside her media bubble. The truth is, Americans are fed up. They're tired of being spoon-fed, carefully packaged narratives that serve political agendas instead of honest reporting. People want facts, not filtered propaganda, and they're waking up fast.
And 4 hours of Joe Scarborough shouldn't be allowed in this country. and then like Rachel Maddow, like it's schizophrenic at times. Like, yeah, I do think there should be some semblance of an idea that, look, they're kicking progressive ass right now. And if progressives don't organize their media, their think tanks and all that, it's going to continue to happen. It's chaos.
I don't know about you, but I can at least understand if MSNBC wants to openly support the Democratic Party or push a particular ideology. Media outlets having political leanings isn't a shock. It's been that way for decades. And if they were just upfront about it, fine. At least we'd all know exactly where they stand. But what truly baffles me is the narrative the left keeps pushing. That MSNBC is somehow a fair, objective, and neutral news source. That's not just misleading, it's a flat-out lie. It's smoke and mirrors designed to give partisan talking points the illusion of journalistic integrity. The truth? MSNBC is deeply embedded in the Democratic establishment. Their coverage rarely, if ever, questions left-leaning narratives. Dissenting voices are either muted or twisted into cartoonish extremes. They're not reporting news. They're shaping it to fit a political agenda. And yet they continue to cling to this ridiculous facade of neutrality. It's intellectual dishonesty at its worst. Anyone who's paying attention can see right through it. Yes, media bias exists across the board, but pretending it doesn't exist at all, that's the real danger we should be worried about.
I will say, broadly speaking, what I'm going to say Democrats, I'm going to say people on the left do not do that the right does very well is support within the system each other. I'm serious. Like, and what I mean by this is this, right?
Yeah.
Theo Vaughn appears on Joe Rogan's show, right? He promotes what Joe Rogan's doing, but they all promote all of the things each other are doing and what the elected officials, I guess, are doing too. And the left is a little bit more kind of discombobulated in terms of supporting the different entities on the left. There is not a left ecosystem that matches the right ecosystem.
But Ailes didn't do that either. It was the principle, the ideological principles, not the party. He and Murdoch the same way. They're promoting an ideological worldview, right? That they believe is correct. And Theo Vaughn and Joe Rogan, I think, are different animals than any of this. Like, I wouldn't say I don't think they're part of any machine.
You can see it all over Jon Stewart's face. The moment Jen Psaki mentions Theo Vaughn and Joe Rogan as examples of right-wing media, he looks genuinely baffled. And honestly, who can blame him? That reaction says it all. This right here is the core issue with the modern left. The belief that anyone who dares to question their narrative or even gives a platform to opposing viewpoints must automatically be labeled as right-wing or conservative. It's a lazy, dishonest tactic to shut down real dialogue. By that logic, anyone who values open discussion or intellectual nuance becomes the enemy. It's tribalism masquerading as virtue. Theo Vaughn is a comedian. Joe Rogan is a podcaster who interviews everyone, from scientists and scholars to conspiracy theorists and presidential candidates. But because they don't parrot the progressive line 100% of the time, they're suddenly branded as conservative operatives. That's absurd. This mindset isn't just intellectually bankrupt, it's dangerous. When disagreement becomes heresy, the echo chamber becomes a prison. Stewart's takedown of the DNC and Jen Psaki wasn't just funny, it was revealing. It exposed performative politics, media hypocrisy, and a dangerous intolerance for dissent. When even comedians are labeled threats for questioning narratives, it's clear something's broken. The illusion is cracking. If you enjoyed this video, hit like, subscribe, and stay tuned. There's more to come. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.